County Extension. I'm the Ag and Natural Resources Program Assistant.
Hi, my name is Frank Becker. I'm the Integrated Pest Management Program Coordinator with the Wayne County Extension Office.
Today we're going to talk about soil sampling. So Frank, what are some of the main reasons that we want to go ahead and do soil sampling in our fields?
So the reason we do soil sampling, one, we want to know what nutrients we're working with in our field before we apply anything and give ourselves credit for what's already there. Secondly, we want to know what kind of nutrient removal rates our crops are having, and based on that we can go ahead and make predictions on how much we need to apply or correlate that with our yield maps.
And is it important to know what crop we're growing next?
Absolutely. So when you look at planting crops and applying nutrients and soil sampling, it's really helpful to know what your crop rotation is and what the future is going to look like for the field.
And how often do we recommend soil sampling?
So you really can soil sample every 3 to 4 years, or it's also recommended if you have a corn-soybean rotation that you can go ahead and sample after every rotation, typically following soybeans in this corn-soybean rotation.
All right, well, we'll go ahead and get some of our equipment and we'll move on.
Perfect.
You're going to want a soil probe. You're also going to want a bucket and a bag or something else to put your samples in to go ahead and send that into the lab. Frank's got a bag here. How many samples do we want to take in a single field or in an area?
So how big is your field? Basically, you don't want to have a representative sample area any bigger than 25 acres. And then at each sample location, you're going to want to take about 10 or 15 cores per sample location.
So as we think about soil sampling, a question that often comes up is, when is the best time of year to soil sample? So Frank, what would you tell people?
So there's not really a quote-unquote best time. Basically, what the best practice is to be consistent with when you pull your soil samples. So, we're out here this spring pulling some soil samples. The next time we would pull soil samples, this should be in the spring. Some folks do it in the fall. Just be consistent with the time of year when you're doing it. And that's because different time of year, the nutrient availability is going to be a little different. The key is just to be consistent with the time of year.
Ideally, you want to make sure that the depth is the same in each of those samples. For our sampling purposes, out here in a regular agronomics crop field, we're going to be looking at 8 inches. The easiest thing to do is go ahead and put a piece of tape or a Sharpie marker line on this probe. That way you can make sure you're getting that consistent depth each time. We're looking for a location that's not covered in lots of residue. The goal is to get the soil sample, and while organic matter is part of that, the residue on the surface is going to break down really quickly, and if you're getting a whole bunch of that in your sample, that's not really going to be representative of what's going to be available. So as you can see, we've got our core sample here. It's there to that 8-inch tape line that we've got. Go ahead and take that sample, empty it into your 5-gallon bucket. And then we're going to take more samples throughout the field. Frank, what's the recommendation or one of those best practices for getting multiple samples in the field? How do we do that?
So basically you want to avoid going in straight lines. You want to be random, take a zigzag pattern through the field or an M, and that way you're not necessarily getting too many samples near the edge or all the samples right in the middle of the field. You want a collective representative sample that basically defines or represents really well the sample area. When we look at the recommended sampling depth, 6 to 8 inches like Matthew mentioned, think about the root zone of the plant. That's where the roots are going to be, and that's where we're really most concerned about. That's why when we're pulling samples, it's important that we be consistent. You want to get good estimates of what the pH is and what nutrient availability is like within the root zone. There's other parts of the soil, like Matthew mentioned, with the organic matter, the surface layer, that can kind of throw off some of our soil sample reports. Just think about where the roots are and where they're going to be, bringing up the most nutrients into the plant.
I think most of our farmers know this, but what are the main things that we're looking for on that soil analysis?
So the most important point when we get our soil sample back is going to be our pH. The pH is going to define nutrient availability in our soil. When we look at pH, having a range between 6.0 to 6.8 is kind of our sweet spot and where the nutrients are going to be the most available. Other nutrients we're really concerned about, phosphorus and potassium. Both those nutrients, are important for our crop production and are important numbers to pay attention to.
So once you've went out in the field and taken those 10 to 15 core samples, you're gonna go ahead and have those in the bucket. You don't need to submit the entire quantity of that to the lab. They're really looking for about a pound or a pint of soil. Make sure you're mixing those up well, putting them into a bag. It can be a Ziploc bag, sometimes a brown paper bag. When you decide which lab you want to use, the best thing is just to give them a call, work it out with them, to make sure that you get those results in a timely manner and that you have all the information on there that they're looking for. If you're interested in taking soil samples on your own field, but you don't have a soil probe, but if you'd like to borrow one of these, you can go ahead and give us a call at the Wayne County Extension Office. We can lend that to you.
Thanks for watching our video on taking a soil sample. Our next video is going to be on reading a soil test analysis. So we're going to send this sample to the lab, we'll get the soil test report back, and then we'll walk through on reading those numbers and making some recommendations.